everyone, welcome to Humble Tree Homestead. I'm Denielle Carpino. I'm happy that you guys are here with us today. This is actually a video that I am so excited to finally be doing because I had anticipated doing it at the very inception of doing our YouTube channel. However, with us moving and getting the space set up for the garden, we got a very late start to our growing season. We actually didn't get plants in the ground till June, which around here, that's pretty late. I knew that if I did not just hit record on the video camera, that I would never ever have started doing this. So I just hit record and I started recording. I'm so glad that I did because I now have my 2023 growing season documented. I started to grow a relationship with you guys. I started to kind of get a feel for YouTube, how to edit. I started to just get in the mode. I have a tendency to be a person who will overanalyze, have to have everything so, and a lot of times it paralyzes me and I don't get things done. When it comes to creativity, I'm very much a perfectionist, and if things aren't the way that I envision them, I think that they're a wash and they're useless and there's no point to them. So actually hitting record was a huge first step, and I'm so glad that I did. However, I wanted to introduce myself to you guys. I wanted to let you know who I was. I wanted to grow more of a relationship type relationship, a relationship with you guys and my viewers, and really get to know one another and really know the reasoning behind this channel and like what the motivation and driving force is and why we are working towards homesteading as a way of living. So I am Denielle Carpino. Hello. Nice to finally meet you. You guys have kind of like seen me, but you don't know me. And so this is a chance for me to let you guys start to get to know me, because it's important to know who we're supporting and who we're watching and who we're backing. Is it something that we even can get along with? I think it's important. I know that that's a big part in the people that I watch on YouTube. So I really wanted to come here and actually take a moment and say, hey, this is me. So here we are. I'm Denielle Carpino. We live in Washington State. We are in Zone 7 and we are in desert country, right? You guys think Washington, you probably think beautiful lush trees, the evergreen side of Washington. No, there are vast nothingness in the center of Washington State, and that is where I am. I am in South Central Washington State, and we do have farming around here thanks to irrigation. We are actually very well known for farming. A lot of our farming in this area goes out elsewhere. However, we are not lush, beautiful Seattle area. We are desert land here. So now you guys have an idea of what our growing area actually looks like. When I say Washington State, I think people think that beautiful, lush, green area with lots of rain. Opposite. That's not me here. This year, like I said, was our very first in-ground garden, and I'm glad that it kind of took me a while to get this video done because through the growing season, I was really busy and I didn't really think about what I was doing. I was just doing the thing, right? I try to take fall and winter and learn things and learn about myself and grow as a human. I started to really remember why I wanted to grow my own food, why I wanted to live this type of lifestyle of making things myself and being part of nature and being part of bringing in my own food and really having control over the food I ate. Now I am on fire and I'm understanding a lot more how the whole picture of me fits into how we got here. In high school, I took horticulture. I was involved in FFA. I raised a sheep and showed it at fair. I was not a country girl at all. I grew up in town, so it wasn't like I grew up on a farm or anything like that. I had interest from a very early age. As a kid growing up, we used to go to our family's cabin in the Tenasket, Okanagan area, and we would go there all the time. And as a kid, I was enamored by my grandmother. She did everything herself. She made her own soaps. She made us bubbles that were the best bubbles on earth, with dish soap and her handmade soap and water, and those were the best bubbles, and we blew them out of thread spools. Anyways, best bubbles on earth. My grandma on my father's side was very much do it all herself. Why waste money when I can do these things? I was enamored by that. I remember just being fascinated watching her, knowing that she raised a family, and they were a large family. They lived in this tiny cabin on this property. They survived off of that. On there was not any grocery stores for quite a few miles. So they really learned to live off the land. My grandmother was very, I mean, I guess back in the day it was considered just regular skills, but to my generation, it was like jack of all trades. There was not a thing that that woman could not do. And I was just fascinated by her. I would watch her all the time. I'd watch her cook things. She cooked everything from scratch. Nothing came out of a box. And it was fascinating to me. And she also I think she saw that in me. Like, she'd always take me to their root cellar when we were at the cabin. And I was just like so fascinated with this concept that you can store food in the ground and it wouldn't go bad. Or when we were at the cabin, the creek was cold enough and we would store like our beverages and meats and things like that. We didn't have a refrigerator there. We would put it in the creek and it would stay cold enough. And it was like, what? You know, here's this little kid who's growing up in town, and I'm like, I can't believe we can do this. What do you mean this used to be normal? And I was fascinated with that way of living. I remember when we would be at the cabin and my grandfather, he would make me pine needle tea, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And I'd come home and I'd tell all my friends about it, and they're like, you drank tea from pine needles? And I was like, yeah, it's delicious. And by the way, pine needle tea is delicious. Like, I need pine needle tea in my life again. It was just like all these really neat experiences that I had as a kid with my dad's family. They were all woodworkers, and they were all like carved, and we hiked and we did things in nature, and they went fishing all the time. So I was around that, but it wasn't part of my daily life. But I remember as a kid, I just loved that feeling. It was freedom to me, and it was fascinating, and it was creative, and I just loved it. I remember grandma, when I would be bored, she would give me she had this book in the cabin that was a foraging book, and she would give it to me and say, here, go find these things out in the woods on the property. And I would go, and I mean, I think it was to keep me busy, and I'd come back and I'd be like, good luck, grandma, I found this and this. And I started learning about plants at that point in my life unknowingly. And so when it came to high school, I was very interested in taking horticulture. I was like, yes, you mean I can learn more of what I was enjoying? I loved home ec. I've always loved arts. I've always loved anything that I could be creative and create something that I tangibly could see I did this was so motivating for me. So I've always had this like interest for very, I guess, old traditions and old ways of doing things. It's always fascinated me. I've always had this hope and this dream to have my own land and have my own garden, and it's grown over the years, right? It's become more and more part of who I am. I'm noticing as a 40-year-old woman, I'm like, oh, I all of a sudden get all these really odd pieces of me are coming together, and I'm understanding how I got to be this person that I am today, and why I'm motivated towards doing this. And things that I have gone through in my life since then have really kind of helped the whole picture come together even more. So beyond just my general interest for this kind of thing, right? From a very early age, loving nature, loving being more self-sufficient, loving the feeling of freedom of being able to do things for myself and not have to rely on people, having a stubborn independence to me. There's a lot of things that have always been there. But then at 14, I lost my father to ALS. I mentioned that in a video in August, that I had lost my father when I was 14 years old to ALS. And it really triggered some weird things inside of me. I started having a lot of health issues back then, digestive health issues, and obviously depression, because I lost my father when I was 14, and what 14-year-old actually knows how to deal with that and cope with that. However, I didn't know what was going on, and they thought that I had IBS. And it finally became like an issue. The doctors were like, we got to do something to stop this problem, but nobody knew what was going on. Nobody could figure it out. And they put me on Imodium AD. I was taking it 4 times a day. I was constantly on antibiotics because I was constantly sick, and my health started rapidly declining. I remember in my senior year of high school, I felt like I was just sick all the time. Like, you got a cold, I'm getting a cold, and I'm getting it about 4 times worse than you had it. And I was just constant like that for years of my life. I was always getting sick, and it was getting progressively worse. When I was in my mid-20s, I started getting to where I was getting bronchitis very regularly. I was working at the hospital at that time, working for the business office. So when I was working in the hospital, you know, a lot of the doctors and stuff, I kind of got to know people, and people were, you know, why are you always sick? Like, you always get sick. You always have bronchitis. Like, literally, I would have bronchitis at least once a month, if not more. And it never was like I just had a cold. It moved instantly into having bronchitis. I was put on more antibiotics, which I don't understand that, because bronchitis isn't treated with antibiotics. I'm not really sure why that was happened, but again, there's that deterioration of my health, right? Antibiotics are great when they are necessary, but we are a population that is given antibiotics for literally everything. So anyways, my health continues to decline, right? And I started looking into it because doctors were like, I don't know what's wrong. Here's some more Imodium. Take Imodium. I'm taking 4+ Imodiums a day. Everything I eat upsets my stomach. And then they're like, well, it's IBS. Okay, so I start cutting out beef, and I start cutting out fatty foods, and I start cutting out spicy food and dairies and like all these things that were supposed to help with my IBS, and I'm still having issues with food. Every time I eat food, I have to run to the bathroom within a half an hour. I know this is too much information, but it is important to the story. Anyways, I am in a very bad state. I'm getting more and more sick. Doctors can't figure out what's going on. At this point, the internet is becoming a viable source of information for me, to the point that I can actually start researching stuff myself. Before that, it was shoddy. You couldn't really tell if you were getting good information or not good information. And if you grew up during that time, you know, the internet was not always what the internet is today. There was not that much information out there. So I start researching, and I start figuring out, I'm like, what? I'm putting in all my symptoms, and I'm starting to, like, you know, every time I eat, I get sick. Every time I, you know, all these things, I get bronchitis all the time, and this is happening to me, and this is happening to me. Finding on there gluten intolerance. And I'm thinking, wow, this really ticks all the boxes for what's going on with me. And I remember going into my doctor, and I was like, hey, do you think it could be gluten intolerance? And he was like, what's that? At that point, I realized, wow, our healthcare system doesn't understand new health issues. Here he comes pulling out his computer. Dr. Google, what is gluten intolerance? And mind you, I live in a small town. This was 16 years ago, 15 years ago now. And, you know, in a small town, that kind of stuff was not heard of. I mean, it's just recently become like a thing that people actually know about in my area and stuff like that. Not just recently, but like in the scheme of my health journey, it's been recently that people understand it. So anyways, you know, I'm like watching the doctor. I'm like, he's doing the exact same thing I just did. Like, I just Googled it to figure it out, and here he is doing the same thing. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes me feel real good about my doctor choice here. But, you know, he looks at it, he goes, no, that sounds spot on, like what you're dealing with. So let's have you cut out gluten. So I cut out gluten. I'm not eating gluten. Things are getting better. I'm getting so much healthier. I'm not getting bronchitis all the time. I'm not having bathroom issues all the time. I'm able to get off of Imodium AD. Great. This is fantastic news, right? I'm getting better. I'm getting healthier. I had several really, really good years of like being healthy. At this point, I had quit drinking too. I was in a really good state. I found God in my life. I was engaged, getting married, all these things, right? Life was lining up. I was feeling so good. My health was getting so good. I was finding passions in life and kind of chasing after them, and then boom, I get incredibly sick again. I get to the point to where, well, first of all, we start dealing with not being able to conceive. We're dealing with that. And from that, it just escalated so fast. My 30s were spent incredibly ill, to the point that I had to have blood transfusions to save my life 2 different times. I had a lot of menstrual issues. I was incredibly sick, to the point that I was bedridden for the most part. I could get up and walk around my house. I could go to somebody else's house and sit on the couch and fall asleep. I was incredibly anemic, so sick, continually having health issues. Everything was setting me off. I didn't know what was going on with me. Doctors didn't know what was going on with me. They got to the point where they were like, you're just a hypochondriac, go home. You have anxiety, go home. Meanwhile, my vitals are all over the place in the emergency rooms. My health isn't doing well. I can't breathe. I'm not good. I know what I normally feel like. I know my baseline of health, and I know where I'm at, and that is not where I'm at anymore. I am not well. I have always been a person who had so much energy, and I could just go from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep and go hard all day long. And I was at the point to where I was fading away. I was dying. I couldn't breathe. I was so sick, you guys. I was so sick. It's emotional when I think about it, honestly. It's sad. And I'm grateful that I'm here, but it's been a hard go. This has been a really hard 10 years of my life. Not to mention just the emotional aspect of not being able to conceive, but having health problems on top of it, and then having them never be able to figure out what's going on with you, and you keep racking up this medical debt with no answers, and further from your dreams, because you're now in debt, you're now sick, you're now unable to even function, you can't think of anything. Your doctors keep telling you nothing's wrong with you, but you know that something's wrong, and you're on the verge of your deathbed, but nobody can figure out what's wrong with you. It's in your head, go home, is basically what it came to, because they couldn't figure out what was going on. I went through several doctors during this phase of my life, and because I knew something was wrong. In my gut, I knew there is something going on with me, and you guys aren't figuring this out, and somebody has to figure it out. I learned from a very early age that you have to be an advocate for yourself, for your health and your well-being, or nobody else will do it in this day and age and the society that we live in. It has to be on you. So I start Dr. Googling again, right? Which was a really bad thing with all the symptoms I was having, because it was not making the anxiety that I was starting to get, because I was starting to get incredibly bad medical-based anxiety. Because when you continually go to a doctor and they continually tell you that nothing is wrong with you, you are fine, go home, but you know that you're sick, and you've also been through a lot of medical things with other people, it causes anxiety in you. And then when you continually are going through worse and worse things in your own life, it compounds and it becomes worse. And so Dr. Google just ignites that in me, right? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, everything's wrong with me. And I started to kind of get to that point, and then I kind of took a step back, right? And I was like, okay, wait, we got to figure this out. So I started finding new doctors. I started researching things on my own and finding people who would listen to me, and we figured out that I had some health things actually going on. I had an autoimmune disease that everybody was looking over for a long time. Lupus sits dormant in my body currently. We do not know if at some point it can become active. I carry it. It is there, and we are constantly watching it at this point. I have Sjogren's, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks your mucous membranes. It also attacks, I get dry eyes to no extent. My mouth is dry beyond words, to the point that for those of you guys who don't know me and haven't known my journey, a year ago on November 1st, I had to get all my teeth removed and had to have dentures put in. I am 40 years old, and I have full set of dentures because my autoimmune disease and my anemia destroyed my teeth. They would crumble. I would go to the dentist. They couldn't get it they couldn't get on top of it. I'd sit in the chair for months straight fixing the problems just to turn around and have decay again where they first started off. We couldn't get on top of it. We continued to pour more and more money into trying to figure out my health, and ended up getting to this point where the dentist was like, I have nothing else that I can fill. They're just crumbling and falling apart because your mouth is so dry, and this is your last resort. I had to go get dentures taken care of, and that was very hard. That was very hard for me because it wasn't, and this is no shame to any person who has dentures because they have a fear of the dentist or because they aren't able to take care of themselves or anything like that. Like, there's no shame to anybody that has battled with drug addiction or anything like that that's gotten them to that point, but that was not my case. And I was doing everything that I was supposed to do. Why am I in this circumstance? It was hard for me to wrap my head around and cope with. And I got there. I'm doing pretty good at this point with it. And it was just another thing in my journey, so to speak, you know. But my autoimmune disease was really, really taking a toll on my body. It was just attacking me one after another. And then we also found out that I have MTHFR, which is a gene mutation in my body that really kind of threw everything out of whack as well. We have never figured out the issues with my menstrual cycle. That is still, I don't know. I don't know why we haven't been able to conceive. It's heart-wrenching. I don't know why I have so much debt and no answers. I don't know why I still have empty arms. That's an emotional topic for me because that's a dream that I've always had, and I've always wanted to have children, and we don't. And it's hard, especially at 40. I kind of know that that door is kind of closed. It's not easy to accept, but we're gonna get through it. It's a journey. I find out that I do actually legitimately have health issues going on, and we had to put me on birth control to keep me from having the menstrual issues that I was having, so that way I could become not anemic anymore. So that's kind of like the health background of like me, right? But during this time, I started realizing that foods were huge triggers for me, that they were really triggering my health issues. I would gain weight faster than most people. It was me responding to inflammation. I would gain weight like crazy, which would aggravate everything, right? It wasn't about the weight ever for me. It was the fact that with weight came more joint pain. With weight came more fatigue. With weight came more brain fog. With weight came less ability to do things. I really started focusing on how can I heal my body? How can I give it the best chance of survival when nobody can figure out what's going on with me? I clearly am having issues. I started feeling like it was in my head, and I knew it wasn't. And so I began really researching, and it seemed like I was always finding links to food. That's how we ended up getting to like diagnosing me with autoimmune diseases. And it was me researching to the point that I'm like, wait, could it be this? And then the doctor would test, and he was like, oh my goodness, yes. And this doctor was really good. Like he worked with me, and he wanted to figure out things, and you know, but like, I know what has been going on for years. This is a new doctor. I have to like try to catch him up. He's been a godsend in my life, to be honest with you. I had started figuring out in my early 30s, like there's kind of a connection to food here. And I feel like I am malnourished. I feel like my body is not properly absorbing this food that I am eating and breaking it down and utilizing it, and it's almost holding on to everything that is horrible for my body and making me sicker. I started really learning about nutrition, and I started really taking an interest in taking control over my life with food, healing with food. And I got to a point to where I was eating a very, very like clean diet. I only ate meat. It was always grass-fed. It was free range. It was as local as I could get it whenever we could get it. I mean, we were financially struggling really hard, so that's not as easy of a aspect for us at that point. I was eating fruits and vegetables. I was not eating any kind of grain. I wasn't eating any kind of starch. I had a very clean diet, and I started losing weight like crazy. And it wasn't that I wasn't eating enough. It was just everything that was, and I didn't understand it at that time, everything that was inflammatory was out of my diet. And it was now just nutrients that my body could absorb. So I ended up in a state of understanding nutrition and health in a totally different way, and realizing that the FARMacy, F-A-R-M, needs to become our pharmacy, as in big pharma. That should really be our first line of defense, is the food that we eat, the things that we consume and put in our body really are having a direct effect on our health and our well-being. And I got thirsty for more knowledge, and I got thirsty to understand like how the body works and how food affects our health and our well-being and our state of mind and how we function as a society, and why are we getting more and more sick as a whole, and why are we seeming further and further away from answers, and medical debt is so much higher, and why is this junk food so much cheaper and the good food is more expensive. And you know, it's like this whole realization started coming to me. So I had lost 100 pounds and I had kept it off for 4 years consistently. Like it wasn't like I was here, I was there, I was here. I was at a very consistent weight that was good for me. Even though I was sick, I felt healthier than I had felt in years because I wasn't having as much pain. I was able to function a little bit better. I could just feel a difference in my body. My brain was a lot clearer. My mind could think a lot better. I saw improvements in me, even though there was still some health issues with my menstrual cycle going on. The overall health of Denielle as a whole was getting so much better. At that point, like people who know me off of Facebook, like my personal friends and stuff, they saw that journey. They saw me kind of taking that interest in cooking. I started cooking everything from scratch. They saw me starting to lose weight and asking me what I was doing. They saw my health starting to turn around, right? All these things began to happen. It was very visible that there was changes happening in me, and it was awesome and amazing. And then COVID hit in 2020, and we ended up having to really buckle down because of my health issues, my autoimmune disease attacking my lungs as one of its primary things. We had to really be mindful to not be in public. That was what I was advised by my rheumatologist, is you need to quarantine and you need to stay away and stay as safe as you possibly can. That means that we weren't able to get these fresh fruits and vegetables like I used to very easily because they perish away super quick in my fridge, right? And we aren't able to go grocery shopping regularly. When you would go to the grocery store, things were so sparse and picked over. We started really eating in a way that I knew wasn't good for my body. So these things that are bad for my body aren't bad for everybody's. It's most people's healthy diet, but I start putting the weight back on. And again, it's not about the weight. It's about what the weight is doing, right? Because the weight is a sign of inflammation in my body. And I am eating these foods that are causing my inflammation to go up, which means in return, my autoimmune diseases, my health issues, all those things are being brought out of dormancy, and they are getting aggravated at this point. I just started gaining weight, just so incredibly quick. I've ended up putting on almost all that weight back. I started really understanding at that point that these foods really are impacting my health. Like, it's not just a fluke thing that I finally started to lose weight and I started to get healthy and all this stuff. It really is the real deal. Like, that is genuinely the core of my issues. It ignited even more passion in me of like, I need to grow my own food. I need to be able to be self-sustainable to the point that I know where my food is coming from. I know the quality of it. I know that it is getting the nutrients that it's supposed to. The food that is in the grocery stores now is so mass produced. It is lacking in nutrients. Everything is so mass produced now that we are not getting food at its purest form. And I knew in my heart that I just had to do something about that, not just for me, but I want to help others with that as well. So I really started to see this connection in 2020. I saw this Denielle getting unhealthy again, gaining weight, inflammation, state of mind, fogginess, fatigue, everything that I was seeing before, I'm seeing again. And it's scaring me because I don't have another choice. This was a choice I had. I didn't have a place to grow food. I can't go to the grocery store. I need things that are shelf stable. I need things that I can buy in bulk and eat. We got into this horrible way of eating during the whole pandemic. My body's not doing well during this time, right? It's very evident to me, but I have no choice. So I get into these bad rhythms again. I get into this way of eating that's horrible. And if you start kind of slipping over here, well, then I'm starting to slip over here. And then before I know it, everything that I had done to my health, I had undone by having to eat this certain way. And then we fast forward to, we finally get out of the pandemic and things are getting a lot better and we can go grocery shopping more often. And it's safer for me to go out. My rheumatologist tells me it's okay. I'm still wearing masks. I was a lot safer than most people for a long time just because of my autoimmune disease. At this point though, my teeth were declining, which I had told you guys earlier. I am getting to the point now when I go back to trying to eat how I used to, I can't eat those things anymore. Fresh fruits and veggies, I couldn't do. My teeth would crumble. Meat, I couldn't really eat it anymore because of the fact that it was so tough that my teeth were crumbling. So I'm now going back to eating more of what I was eating during the pandemic because that is what my teeth can handle. I had 2 teeth that I was eating off. Everything else was completely messed up. They were broken, they were crumbling, they were done. So I started eating kind of a really like processed, not so much processed, but yes, processed for me, oatmeals, rice. I started eating, I mean, just anything that was soft that I could manage to eat, I was eating because I had to have substance. I couldn't clean up my diet, right? I couldn't clean up the foods that I ate. And then I ended up getting my teeth removed. And then it was, well, you're still kind of having to eat that way. You're healing, right? I can't eat these foods that I used to eat. It's a whole learning process. It's like starting off as a toddler and learning how to eat again. Yes, I have teeth now, but they don't function like regular teeth function. I am not having this diet that I know I should have, right? I am already in this like cycle and spiral, and I still have this passion inside of me to homestead and to grow my own food and to grow food that I know is healthy. I still have this knowledge. I'm still growing in this knowledge. I still have this passion, but I can't see how to make it work. I constantly have people like, hey, I want your recipes. I want to, you know, learn all this stuff, but I don't have the energy to share it with them and I don't feel good. And how am I ever going to show it to anybody? And I, you know, like I'm just in this state of mind where I'm like, nothing makes sense. I have all these weird interests and I cannot make sense of any of them. How does this all fit together? And then we hit December of last year, almost a year ago. And we were asked if we would move into the bottom duplex unit so that my grandparents could move back and spend their last season of life here closer to family that can help them and be there for them and things like that. After consideration, we decided that we were going to move into the basement unit, which held a lot of very hard memories for me that I really struggled with this move, I'll be honest with you. And we get down here and then I'm talking, we rent from my mom. That's why it's my grandparents that moved in and started renting the upstairs. And I live in the basement, you know, and I rent down here. I rent. I do not get my house for free. That's been a misconception for years. And I'm sitting there talking to my mom and she's like, you know, you guys did a very selfless act. I want to give you a space in the yard for a garden. I started crying because that is so important to me, right? I can now grow my own food. And at this point, I'm starting to eat better. I haven't told you guys that part. I'm starting to, like, I'm able to eat anything pretty much now. So anyways, so I am elated. I am so excited that I'm able to finally have my garden, right? And that's where we came into where we are now, where we're recording everything and sharing our journey with you guys and stuff. But through having this garden, that passion has ignited like a wildfire inside of me. Just this desire to grow my own food, because I'm a foodie. I love to cook. I love to create food. I loved the entire experience of growing my own food, going out and picking it. Everything was fresh. I did not eat produce that wasn't picked fresh from my garden, and it was amazing. I'd go out there, I pick my food, I come in and I cook it. You can't get healthier than that. There is no way to get your food healthier than being off the land that you live in and that you tend to and that you care for every single day. And that fire in my soul was ignited like nothing else. And I have such a strong passion and desire to get to a point where we can actually have our own homestead someday, where we can grow our own food, where we can live sustainably off of our own land, where we are not reliant upon a system that is broken to keep us alive, healthy, and well. I cannot explain to you how much my soul needed that. How much healing came from that year, that garden. I set out to grow a garden, I say, and the garden grew me. I learned so much about how all these odd bits and pieces of who I was were going to come together into this beautiful picture. We have a beautiful picture. It's just figuring out how we're going to get there. And that's the journey I want to take you guys on. I want to take you guys along this journey to getting healthier, to getting stronger, becoming more sustainable, learning more of these self-sufficient tasks, having goals that we are, okay, so let's explain it better. I really like Roots and Refuge. That's where I started to really learn a lot about growing food. And Jess has a saying that is, turn your waiting room into a classroom. And it resonated really strongly with me. Because in the time that I had heard that, I was incredibly sick and incredibly unwell. And that saying, my waiting room was literally a doctor's waiting room. And I wanted to learn how to become healthy. And I started to change my life. And I started to get healthy from that saying, turn your waiting room into a classroom. And I started to learn about nutrition, and I started to learn why it was so important to me to grow it. And I may have lost it for a little bit, but growing this season and then reading this book that I just picked up this winter, because, well, I've had it for 2 years, but I finally started reading it this year. It's called Pharmacology by Daphne Miller. And it's talking about the land and how our health is directly connected to the food that we are growing in land and the nutrients. And it's a great book. It's a great book. Read this book. I strongly suggest it if this seems like something that you're passionate about yourself. But all of this has really ignited that fire in me, and that passion and that desire, and the want to, as Jess says, turn my waiting room into a classroom. It's different now. My waiting room is waiting now for that homestead and waiting for God to open that door. And when the time is right, I know he will, because he made this happen in a way that I did not even imagine. I got my garden, right? That means we are working in the right direction. Everything is lining up. Everything is the way that it's supposed to be. Every aspect of my weird art interest and things like that all play into this. My childhood and my interest as a child and my enamoration with my grandmother and the things that she did and my desire to do these things myself are all coming together into this neat little perfect package that God was building all along, of all these little pieces that have made me who I am today and fed this desire and fed this passion. But now that waiting room that I'm turning into a classroom, we're waiting for that homestead, and we're learning along the way. We want to learn skills. We want to learn those things so that when that day comes that we have that homestead sitting in front of us, we don't go, now what do? We go, okay, let's put it into action. Let's make this happen. And I am excited to take you guys along that journey. I'm excited to share with you guys our journey to that, But in addition to that, share my passions with you guys too, and help you to understand why this stuff is so important to me, and understand that food and health connection, as well as take you along the journey in my cooking. And I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do my cooking solely just here, or if I'm going to share clips of my cooking with you guys, and then I'm going to do maybe a different channel for just my cooking. I haven't decided yet how that's going to work out. We'll see as it kind of plays out what seems to be the response, if it needs to be something that's separate or if it can be on here. But however, I am really excited moving forward, you guys. I am passionate about this because it is something that I have devoted a big portion of my life to getting healthy through food, and understanding that that food that we are eating is directly connected to these health issues that we're facing as humans. And it is so cool to see this full picture come along. And that is the purpose of this channel. That's the purpose of Humble Tree Homestead. We have passions to teach this to other people. We hope that someday when we have that homestead, to be able to bring people there and help them learn and help them have hands-on experience and understand how to cook these foods, how to grow these foods, how to come together as a healthy community and help one another out. We have so many desires for a bigger picture of someday on that homestead. I want to have my own little mercantile with local people that are growing local food, and their food is available for people to easily access and have available to them at a much better cost. And we're helping the community, and we're going to be helping out people who are eating that food. I have big dreams. This is just the beginning of those huge dreams of what we want to make happen. And I hope that this journey will be inspiring to people, that this will encourage people who maybe feel like they have nothing. We're starting off as 40-year-old renters with a ton of medical debt that would buy people a home. I don't know how we're going to get there, but God knows how we're going to get there. And I'm trusting along this journey, and I'm taking you along it. And I am so incredibly excited to share it with you guys and to showcase this and hopefully help you guys get there yourselves. Of someday, somebody maybe can look back on this video and go, oh wow, they started here, now they're there. It's going to be a process, and I'm trusting that process, and I'm trusting that this is going to happen, and this is going to be real. And I can think of no better time than now, when grocery prices are through the roof, and when cost of living is so expensive, and in the area that we live in, homes are ridiculously expensive. I don't know how we're going to make this happen. I just know that God will make it happen. And I am so excited for this. And this is our channel. This is what we're going to bring to you. Healthy eating, self-sustainable living, learning how to turn that waiting room, as Jess says, into a classroom. And we're going to learn together. And those of you with experience in this, comment down below, share your experience. Let's share this wealth as a community and help other people get to that point to where they can be self-sufficient. They can be in control of their health and their well-being and their futures. I just see big things for this channel. I see big things for each and every one of us in our futures. I am hopeful that we are all going to reach our dreams and our goals, and I want to encourage you along the way. I want you to feel like this is a place you can go and hope and dream and share those with people, and we can encourage one another along the way and teach each other and learn together as a community. So, welcome to Humble Tree Homestead. I'm Denielle Carpino, and I'm happy to have you here. And remember, those humble beginnings will grow mighty things if we just tend to them. I love you guys, and I hope that you have a very blessed day. To get to start really get to know one another and understand the whole reasoning behind this. What was that? Why did I dart like that? That was weird. in town land, rural, no, that wouldn't be rural, urban. So anyways, and they actually become a lot healthier because